Howdy, friends. It's Andy Vance from the Poultry Science Association. As we've been teasing for several weeks here on the podcast, this July we hosted the annual meeting of the Poultry Science Association in Raleigh, North Carolina. In this week's episode, we're doing something a little different. We're going to bring you interviews that we recorded in person at the annual meeting on site in Raleigh. We set up our podcast booth right in the heart of the event and sat down with several people from across academia, professional members of PSA, and graduate students sharing their research. So let's get to it. Welcome to Unplucked, the official podcast of the Poultry Science Association. This is the podcast where we strip away the fluff and get real about poultry science from bench to barn. At this year's annual meeting, nearly 1,200 members and guests from 39 different countries gathered to discuss the latest research from around the world. They took part in roughly 600 different symposia, abstract, and poster presentations. On site in Raleigh, I talked with several presenters about the research they shared at this year's conference. Before we get to their stories, though, let's talk about what the PSA annual meeting is really all about. At PSA, our mission is to aid in the discovery, dissemination, and practical application of the poultry sciences. And the two key ways we do that are through publishing our journals, Poultry Science, the Journal of Applied Poultry Research, and European Poultry Science. And the other main way is through our international research conferences, like our annual meeting, like our Latin American Scientific Conference in Brazil, like our new Pacific Rim Scientific Conference in Macau. Our flagship of these, of course, is the annual meeting and North American Scientific Conference. We have a few different types of presentations. One, the big symposia. These are invited type talks where experts in the field come together on a key topic such as high-path avian influenza, animal welfare issues, management of poultry, or our informal nutrition symposium. The bulk of the presentations in terms of numbers are abstract presentations. These are where our professional members, graduate students, and other members and guests present 15-minute talks on the latest research they've conducted that are of interest to our mission. And of course, a number of those presentations might also be poster presentations where students and professionals share their research graphically and invite members to walk around in the poster hall and ask them questions in a more informal setting. One of those presenters, and we're going to talk with first, is Dr. Jason Emerett from the University of Illinois in the Department of Animal Sciences. Dr. Emerett is a longtime member of the Poultry Science Association, has been very involved, and really is one of the recognized experts when it comes to teaching poultry science. I sat down with Jason during the conference to hear about his research that he shared during PSA, and really to talk a little bit about the value of getting together with other members at our annual conference. Dr. Emerett, as a poultry scientist, as an animal scientist, in your role at U of I, somebody says, Doc, what do you do for a living? Give me your elevator pitch.
This has changed over the course of my career. Started out more kind of the traditional 50-50 split of teaching and research and amino acid nutrition, a little bit on vitamins and minerals. Kind of transitioned over my career to looking more at nutritional quality of feed ingredients. But the teaching part has grown over the course of my career. So I really look at my role now as helping prepare that next generation of scientists.
Why do you come to the PSA meeting? I know you're somebody who comes to this every year. What brings you back year after year, and what are you hoping to take away from this year's meeting specifically?
I like hearing about the science and seeing the new information. But I'll be honest with you, the older I get, the more it becomes about the people and connecting with people, but also keeping an eye out for what companies are looking for where the science is going. And that helps me do a better job preparing the students that I work with, the undergraduate students, to help guide them in the right direction as they consider future careers and the background knowledge that they need to know.
How do you get them interested in research? Do they come to you interested in research? What's that conversation like at the undergraduate level?
Some come interested in the word research, but they don't know what it means. But they are pretty open to getting those experiences. Now, for a lot of our students at University of Illinois, and I think probably a lot of universities are like this, they're interested at first in vet school, and so they see research as a way to enhance their resume and get some good experience. But there's a percentage of them that become more and more interested in what research means, that process of discovery, and it draws a lot of them in. So when we first talk to them, my conversations are about the experience that you can gain, but over time that becomes more and more about where would you like to go with this? because it is a good way to get people interested. And it's a good way for people who aren't meant for that kind of a career to discover that. And that's okay. Not everybody's meant to do everything.
Yeah. You are somebody who is viewed as expert, authority, good resource in our community in the area of teaching, and you do quite a lot of that and are, I think, very generous in sharing your expertise with the rest of the community in the teaching area. How has teaching poultry science changed in the years that you've been on faculty? What are the issues and challenges that we're dealing with now in the classroom that you weren't dealing with a few years ago?
I think when I first started my career, and this was late 90s, early 2000s, I spent a lot more time thinking about the content. And it feels strange to me that at this time I spend less time thinking about the content and more time thinking about the course resources that we're providing and answering emails and dealing with a lot of that. Course administration has become such a larger part of what we do that it can be a struggle to find time to go back to the content. What am I actually teaching? Now, from the student standpoint, their technical abilities, I would say, have actually gotten worse. They're great at using technology for social media. They're terrible at using technology to find and process information. So that's a big part of what I do. And then the last part, a seismic shift over the last several years, is AI. I teach an advanced composition course, so a lot of writing and trying to figure out how to bring AI into that course so that we're helping them think about how they can use it, but not completely rely on it to do their composition. So that's, I think for a lot of us, whether it's a writing course or not, that's a big challenge.
When you're teaching that composition course, are the students coming in better writers, worse writers, the same? Like, I don't want to turn you and I into those grumpy old men yelling at clouds or get off my grass, but I have a sense in reading some of the literature in academia or, Inside Higher Ed or the Chronicle or some of the trade pubs. Yeah. The sense I have is that we're sending kids off to college who are poor writers compared to a generation ago.
Yep. And it's a challenge on two fronts with a lot of students. Grammar skills they're atrocious. And there's just so many teachers that don't feel like it's important. High school teachers, college teachers. And I try to help the students understand, I'm not trying to be the grammar police, but the structure of your writing impacts the interpretation, it impacts a reader's understanding. So that part is challenging. And then having them understand how to create a narrative with a flow. Even in a scientific paper, it needs to flow, not just be a series of fact. There needs to be, in essence, a story. So some students really struggle with that, but I'll tell you also, I have students come in who are better writers than I am, very gifted, to the point where I wish that I could just excuse them from the class. We don't have a proficiency opportunity, but there are some who are phenomenal, and that gives me a lot of hope.
This is something I think about a lot, just holistically, whether it's our journals, whether it's students in our classrooms, for PSA more broadly, what's the right way to use that tool? What's the proper role? I'm going to assume it's not going away. And so for you as a teacher, how would you set up policy for what students can, should not do with today's suite of AI tools?
I think one of the biggest benefits to me is the opportunity to do really enhanced, refined, quick searches. If you're using an AI tool that is more reliable and gives you accurate citations and can lead you to real sources.
Right.
So that's something I try to model for them in the class. Helping create ideas, helping you think outside of your box. That's personally how I use it, is to break me out of a rut. Maybe it's with an assignment or with a quiz, just to give me new ideas. But where I think it can't replace your thoughts, it can't replace your ideas, your opinions. And to the extent that you need to think about that in your writing, because we're all trying to interpret data, convey a message. And it's important to maintain that human element in that. So I feel pretty strongly that at the end of the whole process, most of it needs to be your creation. You guided it. You can use AI as a helpful tool, but you need to guide that process and be an active part of that process.
What percentage of students would you estimate are using a generative AI tool of some sort on any given assignment?
I think using it at all, I'd say probably 80 or 90%, because a lot of them are using it to check grammar.
Yeah.
but then some are using it more. It's probably about 20% who are going beyond the course policies, but there's another 20 or 30% at times who really resist. They don't want to use it. Some are afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you actually see students on both ends. It's pretty interesting.
Is one of the ways that we quote unquote combat that, put the old blue books in front of them and just sit them down and say, okay, you got to handwrite your essays?
I was actually last night in the hotel room taking some notes along those very lines, ideas about what we can do in class, actual writing on paper. I won't be able to read it, but nevertheless, actual writing on paper, and so that we can at least model some of that writing process with no tools.
Great insights there from Dr. Emerett about the ways teaching has changed in the age of artificial intelligence and how it can be both an opportunity for and the responsibility of educators to work with students to get the best outcome and to help break them out of a rut, creatively speaking. Now, speaking of education, I also had the chance to talk with some of our graduate student members. You know, there are more than 700 graduate student members of PSA. Hundreds of them attended annual meeting to present their research to the membership. That research is what will carry the industry into the future. Let's have a listen to some of the studies being carried out by our best and our brightest.
Hi, hello. Myself is Vaishnavi Silveru. I'm from Cleveland State University. I'm working on what is the efficacy of the disinfection process and what is the organic matter interaction with the disinfectant in the poultry processing. These are mostly related to the integrate this experimental data to the mathematical modeling to create a differential equations to make it to available for the pilot scales to use and make it a hassle-free disinfectant process and the faster disinfectant process to get a 0% reduction of the bacteria.
What would be the big takeaway you would want to leave a viewer or listener with?
In the outside world, still we see the outbreaks after the disinfectant processes. So which means whatever the poultry product we are going to eat is still having a bacterial outbreaks. Why it is happening? Just because of the only concern was the disinfectant process is not happening good. So what was the best outcome is we realized if there is no organic content is available in the chiller tank, but that is never going to be happen. But the condition is even to the 0.25 grams of the free chlorine available in the tank, it kills a 7 log bacteria. So which means we have to make sure every time more than a 0.25 milligrams of a free chlorine should be available. I'm talking about free chlorine, not the residual chlorine. So if it is the active chlorine is available, it kills a 7 log bacteria. That was the best key finding we got it. And also we are creating a kinetics to see how faster is the consumption of the free chlorine was within a 60 minutes when we have a higher concentrations of 300 milligrams per liters. If it is consuming in a 60 minutes, we can get a better kinetics out of it. How much of the actual concentrations we need to make it a scale up for if we have a huge scale of the bacteria is there and a huge quantity of the birds are in the chiller tank. So this was the two best outcomes we got from the disinfectant process.
What do you see as the potential impact for the poultry industry or for future research from this particular project?
The best impact is going to be if we know the decay of the disinfectant kinetics. So by that decay, we can get to know that by using of the concentrations limits, the free chlorine disinfectant concentration limits and the concentration efficacy and how much of the reduction of the pathogen is going to be happening that if you get these outcomes by using of the results I got it, so we can create a pilot scale equation and apply that equation into the pilot scale and we can get the 0% reduction of the post-processed product which is releasing into the stores.
I am Demilade Biwoye. I work for Dr. Belki. I'm in NC State's State Department of Poultry Science.
Give us your summary of your research and what you're presenting here at the meeting.
Here I presented on immune responses in turkey poults and the Zika tonsil and the spleen. So what we're actually looking at is characterizing immune response in Eimeria, in turkey poults, in Eimeria, mixed Eimeria species.
What did you learn?
We understand that Eimeria is dynamic in turkey poults. The disease is dynamic, it's cytokine driven, it is tissue specific, And we are seeing a lot of insights from the immune response in which this turkey respond to Emerett infections. So necessarily the way I would put it is just that the way we treat turkey is different from the way we should treat chicken in terms of Emerett infection, because they are very different. In terms of IL-10, there is always increase in IL-10 when we are taking coccidiosis in chicken, and that's what we expect in turkeys. But in turkeys, we are seeing turkey as a different species, the way they actually respond to Emerett infection. So it's actually very interesting.
That's a pretty great key takeaway. I'm curious, how did you get interested in this particular project?
I've been working in the turkey industry for like almost 4 years now. So we are actually looking for ways in which we can control turkey coccidiosis. And before we even control them, we need to understand the way in which turkey poultry respond to Emerett infection. We want to be able to characterize that, which is different from the one happening in chicken. So that will ensure we could actually have proper development of control strategies in turkey poults.
What was the biggest challenge you faced with this particular project?
So I would say everything was in place. We have the perfect farm, the TTEU, like the professors were also Andy, they help. When you have like maybe a little bit of misconception, you can walk up to our professors because they are readily available. So that actually helped. My PI also, the Colisa Bielki, I ask a lot of questions. So like every once a week, I go to lay my challenges to what I'm facing, like literature. I will talk about it for like an hour or 2 hours every week. So like regularly, that made me to understand my research more and also to be versed in the literature, yeah.
When you think about your findings you were discussing earlier, what do you see as the potential impact for the turkey industry from this study? And is there additional research that you think will come from your findings?
So basically in the literature, they have actually characterized adenoides, just a species. But now we have characterized 3 different species, adenoides, gallipovones, and melagrammides. So through understanding that when we have multi-species challenge in coccidiosis and understanding the way in which birds respond to that, we can actually know of ways in which we can control the infection in birds. So we're not just thinking of one species, we are seeing it from 3 different angles. And recently, EV Pharma has a new vaccine that has the 3 species. So we are thinking of the effect of these in other control methods. Okay, if we are using vaccine, should we use medication with vaccine? Should we use vaccine as a standalone? We are trying to see the best method we can use.
Good morning, my name is Praveen Kosuri and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Connecticut.
And how would you explain your research?
How you control Salmonella in poultry. So that's the main research that I'm working on. Salmonella is one of the leading causes of foodborne outbreaks. So when you think of any foodborne outbreaks, the first thing that comes into your mind is Salmonella. So as soon as you think Salmonella, when you're in a PSA meeting, the next thing that comes to your mind is the poultry and eggs. So basically our lab is devoted to working on different natural interventions like using of probiotics, postbiotics to control Salmonella along the production life cycle. My primary research is on broiler production life cycle, that is from hatching eggs to the final grow-out stage.
What's one thing you would hope they took away from your presentation?
Salmonella is not bacteria that you can't control and it's very risky or something like that. You have interventions coming up that we can control Salmonella.
Looking at how you got started in this project, what inspired this particular research project, or how did you get started on this particular presentation?
Before I joined UConn, I used to work as a government veterinarian back in India. So where I used to cover slaughterhouses, the poultry and the sheep slaughterhouses. So I know the importance of having good sanitation in your slaughterhouse and what are the foodborne outbreaks that you get across those chain of processes. That made me to think a lot and apply to courses that are linked to food protection and control of pathogens. So I came across this course where they're working on controlling Salmonella using natural interventions. So that really intrigued my interest. So I applied for the course. So I got into that research.
What's the biggest challenge you faced while conducting the study?
Standardizing the protocol is a big headache for me because we sprayed probiotics on eggs and we inoculated the Salmonella on the surface of the egg. So it's highly important for us to standardize what volume of Salmonella you need to inoculate to recover the Salmonella and also to have an effect of probiotics on the Salmonella. So it kind of took me an year to standardize all these protocols to start my main research work. So it's really a challenge for me to standardize these things.
And lastly, how do you think your findings could impact the poultry industry, whether that's future research or practical applications on the farm or in processing? What do you think?
So far, we seen a really great results from our research. The main thing is we are thinking of how we need to take into the main field as a intervention, how people will use it as a feasible intervention or something like that, like as a pellet form or a powder form where you can easily dissolve in a water and just spray the eggs with the probiotics or something like that. I think it has a lot of potential since the probiotics are in use, since they are in use in the industry for a long period of time. So it's not a big challenge for us to implement a new probiotic to control salmonella, I guess.
My name is Ikra Nasir and I'm a PhD candidate at Purdue University.
Boiler up, big fan of Purdue. Did some of my master's studies there. Give us a brief summary of your presentation or poster that you did here.
Antibiotic resistance is a major concern like in overall world. So we are looking for some antibiotic alternatives option that could be used to treat common poultry diseases like fowl typhoid and colibacillosis. So we work with bacteriophage therapy. So we came up with some novel bacteriophage prototypes that could be used to treat bacterial infections in the poultry industry. And here I presented my research about like using those bacteriophage therapy and looking at its impact on chicken gut microbiome, growth performance, and immune response.
What's one of the key takeaways you hope that the audience left with after listening to your presentation, something you hope they learned from your research?
I believe that bacteriophages could be a good and promising alternative, though I didn't see it a lot here at PSA, but still we are like working on that. And then the other important thing is like knowledge translation that I really want everybody to know that it is so important that we should know as a scientist that what our community demands and what are they looking for, like farmers, what are they looking for. So when I presented, people were really interested to know like how you gonna people use this therapy and would they be convinced to use that. So like looking for those approaches, you can still do some behavior theory to understand what are their perceptions toward usage of your therapy. So that was really interesting thing in my presentation, and I think everybody was asking about how it gonna work or how it gonna happen.
I think you have great insights there, and that led to a question I was going to ask was the practical implications. If you think about the impact of your research, how do you think your findings could impact the industry, whether it's future research in the lab or whether it's practical applications out on the farm or in processing?
So that's what we are looking for. So we actually want it to use by industry because we are coming with this product, and this product is just like ready to use after a few more steps. We want to communicate with the farmers. We want to communicate with feed mill operators if they would be interested to use our product in their feed mill. So if the product is in feed and like people will be interested to buy that, like farmers will be interested to buy that, then it could be automatically used as a preventive therapy. So they don't rely a lot on antibiotics. So this would be helpful to treat or like could be used as a preventive therapy for bacterial infection. So that's what our next step that we're really interested in, to use this like at a practical and as an effective approach.
What do you feel is the benefit or the importance of presenting at a meeting like PSA for you as a graduate student?
So this was my very first time at PSA. I didn't know, but it was so exciting. And it was my first oral presentation, so I really gained a lot of confidence, and I realized actually we are doing something because I was like I didn't meet so many poultry people who were working on like these things. So I realized no, these things are very important. So I really like PSA meeting this time, and I'm like surely interested to come again next year.
I'm Prem Mahta and I'm from University of Hawaii at Manoa. Currently, I'm second year PhD student.
Tell us about your research and what you shared here.
So we're working with broiler breeder hens. The hatchability of broiler breeders are going low, and hatchability is especially affected by two major factors. One of them is egg quality and another one is fertility. This time I'm presenting about fertility. So we wanted to find some genetic markers which will tell us that which of the broiler breeders are highly fertile, which are not. So for that we took broiler breeder hens of two age groups, one at their peak production stage to mimic higher fertility and one in their declining phase to mimic lower fertility. And so those were 35 weeks of old for the peak, and we assigned them as young breeders, and another one is from declined phase, which is 50 weeks old, and we assigned them as aged breeders. And so we collected tissue samples from oviduct, magnum, and uterus, which was then sequenced. So we have two groups, one young and aged from magnum, and another young and aged from uterine tissue. And then we analyze those results to get differentially expressed genes. So my results would be one from magnum and one from uterus. So starting from magnum, we got some nice genes that was upregulated in young breeders, and one of them was really interesting. I loved that gene. So it is cat-SPR4. It is the first three-letter cat is like represent cation, can be calcium or other cations, and then letter 4-letter SPER represent sperm. So they are specific to sperm, but the tissue sample I collected was from female, which does not produce sperm. So in the beginning, I was thinking maybe those broiler breeders were inseminated and then sperm was traveling, and then when we collected sample, it might have been trapped, and then we expected RNA. We got that, but then I went more digging for that, and I found that cat-SPR gene has not been found in poultry sperm,
Oh wow.
not in avian sperm. I think it is in female magnum. Now I think we have to think it differently now. Like it is not in sperm, but in female oviduct, which might be complementing its presence in sperm. And then I went more inside to find out what it does. So I found out that it helps in gaining the hypermotility before fusing with the ova in mammals. Because it is not in avian, we don't know what it does there. But as its function is to increase the motility in sperm. So now I assume that maybe it is helping the sperm to travel all the way from the magnum to the infundibulum, where the fertilization happens in birds.
Excellent. What do you see as maybe the biggest impact from your findings in this research project?
Yeah, so we wanted to do something about the hatchability. In the beginning, what we could do is select the breeders, like genetically find a marker to select the breeders, which will say that coming breeders will have higher fertility. And we know that the hatchability follows fertility. It's like 5 to 8% lower. The hatchability is 5 to 8% lower than the fertility. If we go higher fertility, then hatchability also follow it. My future research plan would be like detecting that specific protein from that gene in magnum and see its effect on sperm. Might be future plan, and its impact I'm not sure because this is new and we're in early phase. We might need a lot of study done for that maybe.
I know you'll agree that the research coming from the next generation of poultry scientists is what's going to carry us into the next decade and beyond, bringing the health, the well-being, the management of the bird to even new heights. Now, our final interview in this episode featuring the PSA annual meeting is with Don McIntyre, one of my favorite members of PSA, a longtime supporter of poultry science and our mission. Dr. McIntyre's been a big contributor to PSA for more than 45 years. He has served as the president of our association. He's a fellow. He's one of the kindest people we have in our community. So I wanted to talk with him more about what keeps him coming back year after year to this annual event. Don, I'm curious. So for somebody like you who's been super engaged and involved in PSA, what got you interested in the association to start with, and how did you become such an engaged member of our association?
I'd have to say my mentor, my major professors at Colorado State and at NC State were avid supporters of poultry science. They were active members. They served in the chairs. They worked with the committees and so forth. So I watched my mentors support poultry science over the years. But as I became involved in the society, I found a friendship or a family professionally. Folks from all walks of life, all over the country, all over the world really, who shared a common passion for science and feathers and feeding a hungry world. So for all these years, and it's been 45 years now, I continue to have friends, and coming to meetings like this is almost like a homecoming. It's a reunion for so many folks that you don't get to see every day.
You know, our mission at PSA is about advancing poultry science and aid in the discovery and dissemination of the research and the work. What do you see as the role a meeting like this plays in advancing that mission? So putting your scientist hat on and going and listening to talks or presenting research, what's the role that's played for you as a scientist in helping advance poultry science?
100 years ago, poultry scientists got together to share research results. And over the years, it's been a great place to coordinate or work together. You get a chance to present some preliminary work and have it critiqued by your fellow scientists. Each of the talks that I've sat in this morning was great work, but I've noticed that some of the senior scientists, some of the fellows, some of the major professors will stand up and ask a pointed question about the experimental design, or have you thought about this? Or it's the feedback that you get from trying to do research from fellow scientists that may have a different slant, different scope, an industry perspective versus technical perspective, if you will. But more than that, I think it's a training ground for graduate students, even undergrads. We see more undergrads come in and present nowadays that are headed for graduate school. Right. But it's part of critical training to help our graduate students learn to stand up in front of a group and speak confidently about the work they're doing. It's a chance to show off your skill, if you will, but it also allows feedback on the science that they're trying to conduct. And then the networking of graduate students around the world, where they can go back home, they can participate in our hatchery as a member of poultry science, and actually learn to give back that way too, as an officer in the hatchery, if they will.
I'm curious, as somebody who's been, as you mentioned, active for 45 years, how do you describe your career or what you do for a living to the person you meet on the street and they strike up a conversation and say, "Oh, Don, what do you do?"
Well, I basically start off with animal welfare, animal health on the poultry side. I'm trained as a physiologist. My technical training was repro-phys, but my first job was a meat company. So I became a muscle physiologist at that point. I've worked in live production on the turkey side, the broiler side. I've worked in technical service. But through it all, when you look back on 45 years, I realize I've become a problem solver, which is what a PhD teaches you to do, right? You find the problem, you sort out an answer, and then you formulate a solution. And I've only had one job in 45 years that had a job description. Most times, company would approach me and say, "We have a problem with breast meat," or "We have a problem with growth rate," or "We have a problem with hatchability." So they hire you. You go in, sort it out, write your own job description, and then when the solution is complete, somebody else comes and hires you to solve their problem. So my background is diverse. It's meat, it's production, it's hatchability, it's food safety, it's feed, enzymes, nutrition. But some people say it makes a good resume. Other people say I just can't keep a good job.
As Dr. McIntyre mentioned, one of the great things about the PSA annual meeting is the shared learning that comes from our members. It really is a scientific family. We all want what's best for the birds, and it's our drive toward that goal, that mission, that keeps us pushing the research in new and exciting directions. You know, key topics at this year's annual meeting span things like avian influenza, immunity from disease, genetics, reproduction, nutrition, gut health, innovations in processing and products, as well as smart farming technologies. Those are some of the key topics this year, but every year is a little different. And one of the things that you get from being there in person at a scientific conference like PSA is keeping your thumb on the pulse of the latest innovation, the latest research, as well as what the industry needs to study next. There's always more work to be done. building some of those relationships in the hallways between sessions allows members to discover opportunities for future collaborations, partnerships, and ideas. That's what it's all about, that shared insight, the growing of knowledge, the advancement of the mission of discovering, disseminating, and applying the poultry sciences around the world. I hope you'll join us at a future PSA scientific conference. We've got a couple more opportunities coming up, right? This October, we'll be hosting our PSA Pacific Rim Scientific Conference, the inaugural edition in Macau, one of the special administrative regions of China. We've got a couple hundred abstracts on tap there, a suite of symposia ranging some of the biggest topics of the day, from animal welfare and management on through to nutrition. Would love to see you there. You can learn more about that at poultryscience.org. Click on the meetings and events page. Next October will also be, and so October of 2026, that is, will be in Brazil once again for the 5th edition of our PSA Latin American Scientific Conference. So be thinking about research you may want to present at a future PSA conference, but put the dates on your calendar to join us and take part in really one of the main reasons we exist at PSA. That's it for this year's PSA annual meeting. We'll be back with our regular format next week for another episode of Unplucked. From Raleigh, North Carolina, for the Poultry Science Association, I'm Andy Vance.